There are empires that rise in the daylight, born from courage, discipline, and the unshakable belief that destiny favors the bold. And then there are empires that fall in the quiet of the night, slowly, silently, without a single trumpet to announce their end. A civilization that shaped the world's laws, its architecture, its philosophy, even the way we speak of power itself. An empire that once believed it would stand forever. But history whispers a darker truth. It was not an enemy at the gates that destroyed it, but a secret buried deep within its own heart. The lesson it left behind is not ancient. It is for every nation alive today. There was a time long before our world looked the way it does today, when a single empire stood like a giant among nations. Its banners waved above mountains and seas. Its roads stitched continents together. Its armies marched like the steady beat of a war drum that echoed across the earth. It was not simply a kingdom. It was an idea, the belief that greatness could be built with human hands and made to last forever. In the beginning, this empire was not strong. It was a collection of people bound by hardship, discipline, and the unbreakable belief that fate could be shaped and not accepted. They worked the land. They fought for each stone. And they built not just walls and temples, but identity, a sense of that we are more than survivors. We are destined to shape the world. Their leaders were forged from war and trial, men who believed that courage was the only currency worth anything. And through unity, sacrifice, and iron-will discipline, the empire rose. Brick by brick, law by law, battle by battle, until the world looked up and realized it was standing at the feet of a colossus. At its height, this empire was a beacon. Its city shined with marble and music. Its scholars debated the meaning of virtue and duty. Its generals carved borders as wide as the horizon. From its great courts came laws that still govern nations today. From its philosophers came ideas that still guide the human spirit. From its architects came monuments that time itself struggles to erase. Nations fell before it. Kings bowed. And the world, for a moment, seemed to revolve around one center. It looked eternal, the hidden weakness beneath the glory, but listen closely. History rarely shouts its warnings. It whispers. Because behind the walls of gold, there were cracks. Power invites ambition. Ambition invites greed. And greed is the quiet architect of collapse. The empire that once stood on discipline now drowned in luxury. The leaders who once bled beside their soldiers now feasted in palaces of excess. The unity that once defined them was replaced with division, jealousy, and hunger for personal glory. The empire's greatest enemy lived inside it. No invader brought it down alone. No single battle ended it. It died slowly, as the rich forgot the poor, as leaders argued not for the nation, but for themselves. As enemies watched, waited, and eventually walked through doors already falling off the hinges. When the final blow came, it was not dramatic. No blazing fire. No heroic final stand. Just silence. The silence of something once mighty, now hollow. And so the empire that shaped the world was destroyed by the very hands that built it. Not because they were weak, but because they forgot. They forgot the values that made them strong. They forgot that unity is greater than power. They forgot that a nation is not sustained by its wealth, but by its character. And so, history leaves us with a warning. What is built with discipline can only be preserved with wisdom. What is earned through unity can be lost through division. And what stands for centuries can fall in a single generation if its people forget why it rose at all. So remember this. Empires don't truly fall when their walls crumble. They fall when their hearts do. There came a moment when the empire no longer had to prove itself. Its borders stretched so far that a traveler could walk for months and still be under the same flag. Its roads, straight, strong, enduring, cut through mountains, deserts, and forests, carrying ideas as easily as armies. The empire had become the heartbeat of the world. Cities rose from the dust, gleaming with marble and bronze. Great libraries held knowledge gathered from every land touched by its banners. In the forums, senators debated laws that would echo across centuries. From the amphitheaters came stories of heroism, tragedy, ambition, and fate, reminding all who listened of the fragile thread upon which every life hangs. But it was not only stone and structure that defined this age, it was influence. The kind that seeps quietly into the soul of humanity and remains there long after the empire itself has faded. It shaped the way nations governed themselves. It shaped the way armies marched and fought. It shaped how people thought about duty, honor, justice, and destiny. Merchants traveled its roads not in fear, but in confidence, protected by the simple fact that they belonged to a world where order was maintained by discipline and law, and for a time, that law was respected. Children born in those years grew up believing the empire would never fall. They believed the world had reached perfection, that their civilization had unlocked the secret to eternity. Poets wrote of it. Generals swore their loyalty to it. Philosophers called it the pinnacle of human achievement. It was a time of triumph, a time when the empire appeared invincible. But history has a way of hiding storms behind clear skies, and the higher a civilization rises, further it has to fall. But no empire shines without casting a shadow. While the marble gleamed in the sunlight, while music echoed through halls of triumph, while the people celebrated their eternal greatness, something quiet began to rot beneath the surface. Not all at once, not with alarm, but slowly, like a crack forming in stone, small, invisible, but growing. The empire had been built on discipline, unity, and sacrifice, but now those who sat at the top had forgotten the cost of their own throne. Leaders who once shared the hardships of soldiers now spoke only of privilege and pleasure. Senators who once debated the fate of nations now fought only for their own wealth. Citizens who once saw themselves as one people now divided into classes, ranks, and rivalries. The poor became poorer. The rich became untouchable. The generals became kings of their own armies. And the common man, the backbone of the empire, was left to carry the weight of a world that no longer valued him. Corruption did not arrive with noise, it arrived with comfort. For comfort breeds entitlement. Entitlement breeds arrogance. And arrogance blinds the powerful to the truth. Strength is not permanent. Power is not eternal. Empires are not immortal. The empire had enemies at its borders, but none so dangerous as the enemy born in its heart. Because while walls can be rebuilt and armies can be trained, there is no defense against the corruption of the soul. The empire's greatest threat was itself. And a people once united by destiny now drifted apart like sand slipping through an opening hand. And that is how every fall begins, not outside, but within. Empires do not fall the way mountains break. There is no single thunderclap, no sudden shatter, no single moment where all crashes down. They fall the way night replaces day, quietly, gradually, unnoticed until darkness is all that remains. And so it was with this empire. Signs were there. Whispers in the streets, rumors in the Senate halls, generals returning home not as servants of the state, but as men hungry for their own crowns. The frontier grew thin, the treasury drained like water through open fingers. And the soldiers, once the pride of the world, stood tired, unpaid, and uncertain of what they were even fighting for. The enemies at the borders did not need to be strong, they only needed to be patient. Because the empire was collapsing from within. Civil wars tore the nation apart as leaders fought not for country, but for a name carved into history. Loyalty fractured, not by swords, but by ambition. Faith in the empire's greatness faded, replaced by doubt, resentment, and fear. And in the end, it was not the clash of armies that broke the empire. It was the silence of citizens who no longer believed. The silence of soldiers who no longer trusted. The silence of leaders who could no longer lead. Cities once alive with festivals stood quiet. Markets once full of life became echoes, and the great roads that once carried treasures, armies, and ideas, stood empty under the weight of time. And then one day, the banners that had flown for centuries were lowered. Not with ceremony, not with honor, but with acceptance. A realization that the empire had died long before its borders did. It did not fall because it was conquered. It fell because it forgot what made it strong. In the ashes of that fallen empire, history left behind more than ruins. It left a warning, a whisper carried through time to kings and nations, to leaders and citizens, to every generation that rises believing itself invincible. Strength is not in marble walls, nor in armies, nor in wealth or conquest. Strength is in the unity of a people, in the discipline that forged their beginnings, in the values they refuse to abandon, even when greatness tempts them to forget. For what builds a civilization is never luxury. It is sacrifice. It is duty. It is the willingness to stand together when standing alone is easier. The empire that shaped the world did not fall because its enemies were too strong. It fell because its memory grew too short. It forgot the hunger that built it, the struggle that defined it, the purpose that guided it, the spirit that once made it mighty. And so it left us with one truth etched across the centuries. Civilizations do not die when their walls are broken. They die when their people forget why those walls were. So remember this, for every nation, every leader, every generation that will rise after us, greatness is not something you inherit. It is something you must protect every single day. For the moment we stop guarding the values that made us strong, it's the same moment history begins counting down to our fall.